So when we talk about paper, I mean, you guys mentioned it. I think we had 800 to 1,200 page packets back here somewhere. I mean, that's just tons and tons of paper. So 6,000 agenda pages printed per month on average. That's a ton of paper. 20 agenda packets being distributed per month on average. So 6,000 times 20. You've got 87,000 government agencies, right? And so these are 524 million sheets of paper just for us to run agenda processes, and 61,000 trees every year that we cut down just to distribute agendas. How many of you are still driving packets out to elected officials in the middle of the night? I mean, that's still half the group, right? And the first time that the city of Long Beach, this is one of my examples, talked to us about that. It's like we get these packets and we got to go drive, and one of the council members has a dog, and the dog literally chases him out. And it's just like, wow, really? This is what the clerk's office is spending their time doing? Outside of just the paper process, and this is where the ROI piece comes in. Now, how much time are you guys spending preparing agenda packets? Anybody want to give me the time that their staff spends on an agenda, just collating, printing, and distributing? Anyone want to admit to how much time they spend?
3 days, at least 3 days.
3 days, okay. So $40,000 to $100,000 being spent per year on average on the agenda and legislative process just from a time. So we did a survey, and I think the survey is about probably 4 months old or something like that around the beginning of the year, and just surveyed people, how are you receiving items for your agenda? So we had 37% was email, 24% was paper. I don't know who's getting them verbatim on phone calls over the phone. Anybody have a situation where someone calls you and tells you what they want their item to be?
Yeah.
Really? Well, how does that work?
Well, the city manager or the mayor, they call up and say, "Oh, I forgot this. We need to add it to the agenda."
And they just tell you what the item is?
Right.
I'm going to start with the city of Milwaukee. Milwaukee was one of the first cities in the country, if not the first, to do an agenda automation process. So a legislative management process. Those of you that don't know Milwaukee, it's almost 600,000 people. They handled roughly 2,000 pieces of legislation per year. So agenda items per year that went through the council, 8 standing committees, 22 other bodies, and they had 7 staff members responsible for their legislative process. And we've got Jim up there. How many of you, does anybody know Jim?
I talked to him on the phone.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, if you want to talk to somebody about legislative automation, Jim is an absolute expert. So they had a lot of challenges, just very similar to the challenges you guys have talked about. So one was manual agenda production and hearing notices. They were doing all of this in paper. Right? Managing ordinances on 3x5 cards. I've heard this from a number of clients. Wow, 3x5 cards, it's smaller and more efficient. Let's move to those instead of paper. And I can file them and, one step forward, I guess, in the process. Assembling those thick binders, right? You've got 2,000 items a year. You've got dozens of pages per item they're putting together. And then, of course, the certified copies that they were generating. So, solution. They went with a automated system. They got 81 users across 18 departments. So this wasn't just the clerk's office automation. I think that over time, your guys' role has really changed, right? If we think back 40 years, 50 years, a lot of it was just, hey, go to the meetings and take notes with what happens. Put the agenda together, post it on the tree outside so everyone can see it, and then come take notes. Now, the legislative process is really kind of the center of how we get things done in government, right? I mean, it seems like pretty much everything has to go to a public meeting, get voted on, get approved, and then it can be taken action. And so everybody needs you, right? And I think the clerks have become more technical. You've started hiring people who are more familiar with technology in your offices to run these types of systems that are really connecting to the rest of the city. So Milwaukee, 18 departments, 81 users. They were getting all of their items submitted online. So if you wanted to submit an agenda item, you had to do it online through their system. They trained all of those users how to do it. Absolutely complete end-to-end agenda automation. Automated certified copies and hearing notices. Ebook creation and paperless packets. So they started out just sending it out on, for laptops, but now moving to iPad as well, so that they can distribute those on iPad. And then electronic approval sequences. And so we'll show this. Kelly's going to show this a little bit when we go through the approval, but you can actually kind of set up your workflow, right? So, something comes into you, or who does it need to be approved by? The city manager. I heard someone say earlier, the city manager and mayor didn't talk, so now I got to get in the middle and figure out if they both approved it, can I put it on the agenda, or whatever your process is. Milwaukee had set that up so it was all electronic and automated. Yeah?
One question that I have in reference to, if you're sending it forward, say your legislation's in Word, and you're sending it forward to the different departments or the different managers for approval. As it's going through that process, can people make changes to it in Word and still send it along?
Yeah, that's it. So what you want to be able to do is your same process that you're doing now, right? Where somebody can get it and be like, oh, I think we need to change it, approved with additions or changes, or not approved and suggest these changes. So you can set your workflow up in different ways where people can have different rights and they could actually kind of amend it, with notice back and then approve it and make those adjustments. So you don't necessarily have to start the process over again. We'll show a little bit about that. So here's some of the numbers in Milwaukee. Again, this is a big city, but they saved about $1.85 million to date automating their process. $1.25 million in training costs, right? So this is over a very long period of time. So certainly should know that. It's $52,000 per year saved there. $600,000 saved in labor costs over time. The agenda process from 16 hours down to a few minutes. So this is their roll-up process, which becomes very, very automated. Minutes production from 32 hours to about 8 hours. This process will go down even further. Some of our clients are down, below an hour or 2 hours to do their minutes after the meeting. Risk of human error, right? I mean, a big part of your job is accuracy. You got to get the record right. And the ability to collect data in real time in a system where I don't have to write it down 3 times, I don't get the telephone effect where it's like I'm passing it from 3 different documents. It's going to really improve the accuracy. The city didn't want to do that think green thing the city clerk proposed. All right, and then you're going to get your wish and get those new elections coming in, some new people. So one way or another, you can get them through the green side. So the city council was really behind it. They went 100% paperless for council meetings and agenda packets, right? The drop dead approach. They streamlined their meeting preparation, so $5,000 in printing and copying costs saved annually for them. So again, not a huge number, $5,000 a year, but if you think about the cost for 7 iPads, right, your payback is about 8 months. Right, so you buy the iPads and you're going to pay it back in 8 months just from the paper side. They improved the mobility and usability for meeting agendas, right? So if my packets are this big in St. Paul or anywhere else, and I got to carry those around, I'm not very mobile, especially if I'm 80, right? They just keep making the packets bigger and heavier, thicker paper until they switch. 200 hours of staff time saved on the agenda packets per year, and just overall the efficiency was a lot better. So what did they do? They used the iPad. For the mobility and all the things that I just talked about, they chose it for its user friendliness, right? So the usability of these devices is what's really allowed people who are afraid of computers to go ahead and use them. And times are changing, right? 10 years ago, you had a lot of people afraid of computers. 10 years from now, you're not going to have very many people who are afraid of computers because we've been using them for so long. They used iLegislate, which is our iPad application. It's a free application. I'm going to show it to you here in a little bit. Streamline the agenda process. So this is important, right? Because if you're if you're printing your packets and then scanning them, and then kind of just creating that PDF and distributing it, you're losing a lot of the automation, right? We want to start out with a digital process, an electronic process that's going to record all of our data, it's going to archive it, it's going to have a history for us, it's going to be searchable, but it's also going to automatically distribute this stuff from a digital format. City of Austin, their council and their public information office really believed in the concept that there's a lot of smart people in the city of Austin, there's a lot of well-intentioned people, and we're just not reaching them. So they created that space, that focused area where they could point people for a couple of different reasons. One, they wanted feedback on the things that they were actually doing, your projects. So your 2020 visioning for the city, how do I get people involved in that? Revitalizing downtown, our new bicycling plan. These are all projects you're working in that you love input, right? They also wanted feedback on agendized items and topics, but more than that, what they really wanted is they wanted the community's ideas. And so they went out to the community and they created a site called Speak Up Austin using our technology, and they engaged 1,400 citizens that were not the usual suspects that had been coming to their meetings. They generated over 500 ideas from the community, and they've actually implemented 18 of those ideas already. So just think about that concept. So the digital divide is like the people who are online on one side of the divide and people who are not online on the other side. And that digital divide keeps them from having access to all the stuff you put on the web, right? Hey, if we're only putting it on the web, how do people without internet get it? But I like to talk about the free time divide, right? The people that are usually coming to your meetings are the ones with lots of free time. And then there's everyone else in your community that doesn't come because guess what? I'm not going to leave my kids. I'm not going to go after work, take time off to work if you're a county that meets during the day or if your meetings are during the day. I'm not going to use my vacation to come to your city council meeting and tell you what I think. But if I can spend 5 minutes online and have the same impact, you're going to broaden that group and you're going to get out of the free time divide. And another thing I love about working with you guys, good people at the clerk's office. Honestly, there's the most huggers I've ever seen.